r/ProRevenge. My phone recorded adult daughter trashing me at nail salon. The manicurist's broken English cut through the salon's ambient chatter like a knife. Your daughter, she very, how you say, honest about you. I looked up from my phone, where I'd been mindlessly scrolling through Facebook to avoid making conversation. I'm sorry, what? Linda, the tiny Vietnamese woman who'd been doing my nails for 3 years, glanced nervously toward the pedicure area where my daughter Cassie sat with her feet soaking, animatedly talking to anyone within earshot. Maybe I say nothing. Is not my business. But the way her eyes darted away told me everything I needed to know. My stomach dropped like a stone. What did she say, Linda? She shook her head, focusing intently on my cuticles. Is family matter? I know, get involved. The thing is, I've been getting a weird vibe from people lately. My sister had been acting strange during our last phone call, cutting the conversation short when I mentioned maybe trying online dating again. My neighbor, Mrs. Peterson, had given me this pitying look when I'd asked her to sign for a package last week. Even my coworker Jenny had made some comment about family loyalty that seemed to come out of nowhere. I'd chalked it up to paranoia. 18 months of post-divorce anxiety will do that to you, make you see judgment in every glance, hear criticism in every pause. But sitting there in that nail salon, watching Linda's uncomfortable expression, I realized my paranoia might have been justified. Linda, please. If my own daughter is saying things about me, I need to know. She sighed, her tiny hands pausing their work. Last time she tell everyone you, how she say? Train wreck. She say you cry all time, you have no money, you embarrass her. Linda's voice dropped to a whisper. She say mean things about how you look now. About men you tried to date. The blood rushed to my face so fast I felt dizzy. Cassie had been here without me? When? And she'd been discussing my personal life with strangers? She also say. Linda hesitated. What? She say you blame everyone else for your problems. That you make her father look like bad guy when really you the one who. She trailed off, looking mortified. I couldn't breathe. The familiar scent of nail polish and acetone suddenly felt suffocating. My own daughter, my Cassie, who I'd supported through college, who I'd helped with her apartment deposit just 6 months ago, who called me crying whenever she had boy problems, had been painting me as some pathetic failure to anyone who'd listen. When was this? My voice came out steadier than I felt. 2 weeks ago. She come with friend. They laugh about. Linda stopped herself. I sorry. I should not say. But today, when I see you together, I think maybe you should know. I glanced over at Cassie, who was showing the pedicurist pictures on her phone, probably her engagement ring or wedding venues. She looked beautiful and animated, just like she always did. 28 years old, successful marketing job, gorgeous fiancé from a well-off family. My pride and joy. Who apparently thought I was a train wreck. The worst part? I couldn't even completely blame her. The divorce had been messy. I had cried, a lot. I was struggling financially. I had been dating, unsuccessfully and probably desperately. But hearing it described as entertainment for nail salon gossip felt like being gutted with a rusty spoon. I spent the rest of my manicure in a haze, nodding and smiling while Linda applied the base coat with extra gentleness, as if she could somehow cushion the blow of what she'd revealed. My mind raced through every recent interaction with Cassie, looking for signs I'd missed. The way she'd rolled her eyes when I'd mentioned my date with that accountant from Match.com. How she'd quickly changed the subject when I'd talked about maybe taking a community college course to update my skills. The subtle wince when I'd worn that new dress to her birthday dinner, the one I thought made me look younger but now realized probably just made me look desperate. All done, hon, Linda said softly, giving my hand a quick pat. You have a nice day, okay? I walked over to the drying station just as Cassie was finishing up. She looked radiant, as always, her blonde hair perfectly styled, her engagement ring catching the light as she gestured. Mom. Look how cute these turned out. She wiggled her toes, showing off a pale pink polish. Perfect for the engagement photos next week. Beautiful, I managed, settling into the chair beside her. Oh, and I've been meaning to tell you, Marcus's mom wants to take us all to lunch this weekend. You know, to get to know the family better. Cassie used air quotes, and something in her tone made my stomach clench. I told her you might be busy, but she insisted. There it was. The slight emphasis on insisted, like it was an unfortunate obligation. Like I was a chore to be managed. That sounds lovely, I said, watching her face carefully. Cassie's smile faltered for just a second. Well, I mean, if you're up for it. I know social things have been challenging since the divorce. Challenging. Like I was a rescue dog who might bite the guests. Actually, Cassie, I've been meaning to ask you something. I kept my voice light, conversational. I ran into Sarah Morrison at the grocery store yesterday. She mentioned she'd heard about my dating adventures. I laughed, but it sounded hollow even to me. I couldn't figure out how she'd know about that, since I haven't really talked to her in months. Cassie's cheeks flushed pink. Oh. Well, you know how small towns are. People talk. Right, but the thing is, she knew specific details. About the guy who showed up drunk to our coffee date. About the one who still lived with his mother. I watched her face carefully. Pretty specific for small town gossip. Mom, She looked around the salon, suddenly uncomfortable. Can we talk about this later? Have you been discussing my personal life with people, Cassie? The question hung between us like a landmine. I could see the war playing out on her face, the part of her that wanted to deny it battling with the part that seemed almost relieved to be caught. It's not like that, she said finally. Sometimes people ask how you're doing, and I worry about you, you know? The way you've been since Dad left. And maybe I've said things to friends, but it's coming from a place of love. Love. She was calling her cruel commentary love. What exactly have you said? Nothing bad. Just. Mom, you have to admit, you've been struggling. And when people see you trying to date guys half your age, or posting those Facebook pictures with all those filters. She trailed off, realizing she'd said too much. Half my age? The accountant was 46. And what was wrong with using filters? Everyone used filters. But looking at her expression, part guilt, part exasperation, part embarrassment, I realized this went much deeper than I'd imagined. You know what, let's just drop it, Cassie said, standing up abruptly. I need to pay and get going. Marcus and I have dinner reservations. But I wasn't ready to drop it. Not anymore. Cassie, sit down. Please. She glanced around the salon again, clearly mortified that we were having this conversation in public. The irony wasn't lost on me. She was embarrassed to be called out in the same place where she'd apparently been trashing me to strangers. Fine. But can we keep our voices down? I waited until she reluctantly settled back into her chair. I need you to be honest with me. How many people have you talked to about my situation? Mom, you're making this into something bigger than it is. Answer the question. She sighed dramatically, like I was being unreasonable. I don't know. A few friends. Maybe I mentioned something to Aunt Rachel when she asked how you were handling everything. And Marcus's family, they had questions when we told them you were divorced. My blood pressure spiked. What kind of questions? Just normal stuff. Like whether you were stable, whether you had your act together. They're very traditional, Mom. Image matters to them. She lowered her voice. And honestly? I was trying to manage their expectations so they wouldn't be shocked when they met you. Shocked when they met me. Like I was some kind of walking disaster. What did you tell them? Cassie shifted uncomfortably. Just that you'd been going through a rough patch. That the divorce hit you hard and you were still adjusting. There was something in the way she said adjusting that made me think there was more to it. What else? Nothing else. Cassie. She groaned. Okay, fine. I might have mentioned that you'd been making some questionable choices. The dating thing, some of your outfits, the way you've been posting on social media. But I was trying to prepare them so they'd be understanding. Understanding. Like I was a charity case requiring their patience. And what about your friends? What have you told them? Mom, why does this matter? They're my friends. Sometimes I need to vent to someone about family stuff. Everyone does it. There's a difference between venting and... I stopped myself before I said something I'd regret. But the damage was already done. I could see it in her face, the moment she realized I knew exactly what she'd been doing. And what? What are you accusing me of? The salon had gone quieter around us. I could feel Linda pretending not to listen while she cleaned her tools. Other customers were stealing glances in our direction. I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm just trying to understand why everyone in my life suddenly seems to be treating me like I'm falling apart. Because you are. The words burst out of her before she could stop them. Her hand flew to her mouth, but it was too late. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Even the nail dryer seemed louder in the sudden quiet. Cassie, I said slowly, I think you need to explain what you mean by that. She looked trapped, her eyes darting toward the exit like she was calculating whether she could make a run for it. I didn't mean it like that. How did you mean it? I just... Mom, you have to see it from my perspective. Ever since the divorce, you've been all over the place. The constant phone calls when you're upset, asking me to help you figure out dating apps, showing up to family events in clothes that are too young for you. She was gaining momentum now, like a dam breaking. And now you're planning this whole new life thing when you can barely keep up with the life you have. Each word hit like a physical blow. But what hurt most was the relief in her voice, like she'd been carrying this around for months and was finally free to let it out. I see, I said quietly. And discussing this with everyone makes it better, how exactly? It doesn't, Cassie said, but her tone suggested she didn't really mean it. But Mom, I can't be your only support system. When you call me crying about another bad date, or send me screenshots of meme messages from Dad's lawyer, or ask me to explain why he's being so cruel, I need somewhere to process that. My friends, my therapist, Marcus. My mouth went dry. You discuss our family business with Marcus? And a therapist? Of course I discuss it with my fiancé. We're getting married. We don't keep secrets. She paused, and something flickered across her face. And yes, I started seeing Dr. Peterson about family dynamics. She says it's completely normal to need boundaries with parents who are going through major life transitions. Family dynamics. Boundaries. She was talking about me like I was a psychological case study. What kind of boundaries? Cassie glanced around nervously. The salon was definitely listening now. Linda had moved on to organizing already organized supplies, clearly stalling to stay within earshot. Can we please finish this conversation in the car? No. I want to understand what boundaries you've set with me. My voice was getting harder to control. Since apparently everyone else already knows about them. She closed her eyes briefly, like she was gathering courage. Like not answering every phone call immediately. Not feeling guilty when I can't fix your problems. Not having to manage how you present yourself to my future in-laws. Manage how I present myself. Mom, Marcus's family is very conservative. Traditional. His father is a federal judge, his mother sits on charity boards. Image matters to them, and whether that's fair or not, it affects Marcus's career prospects. Her voice was getting defensive now. When they ask about family background, I can't exactly say my mother is spiraling through midlife crisis dating disasters and posting thirst traps on Facebook. Thirst traps. She called my photos thirst traps. Those were pictures from my friend Sharon's birthday party. I looked nice for once and wanted to share it. Mom, you were wearing a crop top. You're 52. The judgment in her voice was devastating. This was my daughter, the person who used to beg me to dance with her in the kitchen, who'd cried in my arms over every broken heart and disappointment. Now she was sitting here cataloging my failures like evidence in a court case. So you told Marcus's family what, exactly? Just that you were adjusting to being single again and might seem a little enthusiastic about your new freedom. I wanted them to understand why you might come across as... She searched for words. As what? Desperate, she whispered, the word barely audible. It hit me like a slap. Not because it was cruel, but because part of me wondered if she was right. Had I been desperate? The dating apps, the new clothes, the filtered selfies, had I been that obvious? But even if I had been, hearing it from my own daughter felt like a betrayal so complete I couldn't process it. I see, I said again, my voice flat. And have you shared any other insights about my desperation with Marcus's family? Mom, stop. You're twisting this around. I was trying to protect you. Protect me by telling them I'm desperate? By managing their expectations so they'd be patient with you. Her voice cracked slightly. Do you have any idea what it's like watching your mother fall apart and not being able to fix it? Do you know how helpless I feel when you call me sobbing because dad's moved on and you haven't? The raw pain in her voice caught me off guard. For a moment, I glimpsed the daughter who'd been carrying worry about me like a weight she couldn't put down. But then she kept talking. I love you, but I can't keep pretending everything's fine when it's not. And if that makes me a bad daughter, then I guess I'm a bad daughter. The silence that followed felt like it could shatter glass. I stared at my daughter, this beautiful, successful woman I'd raised, and realized I was looking at a stranger. When had she become so calculating? So cold? You know what the worst part is, Cassie? My voice was steadier than I felt. It's not that you think I'm desperate. It's that you've made me everyone else's entertainment. That's not. Let me finish. Something in my tone made her snap her mouth shut. You talk about protecting me, but what you've really been doing is protecting yourself. From the embarrassment of having a mother who doesn't fit into your perfect narrative. Her face flushed red. That's not fair. Isn't it? You just admitted you're managing how I present to Marcus's family. Like I'm a liability to be handled rather than a person to be loved. Mom, you're being dramatic. Am I? I leaned forward slightly. Tell me exactly what you told Marcus about our family situation. Word for word. Cassie's eyes darted around the salon again. Linda had given up all pretense of working and was openly listening now, along with 2 other customers who'd paused their nail selection to tune in. I'm not doing this here. Yes, you are. Because apparently here is where you're comfortable discussing my personal life. I gestured around the salon. Linda tells me you've been quite chatty during your visits. The color drained from Cassie's face. She told you that? She was trying to be kind. Unlike some people. I watched her squirm. So tell me, what version of our family story have you been sharing with Marcus? The sanitized version for his parents, or the cruel one for your girlfriends? I never said anything cruel. Really? Because according to Linda, you called me a train wreck who embarrasses you. You mocked my appearance and my dating life. You told complete strangers that I blame everyone else for my problems. Each word felt like swallowing glass. Does that sound like love to you? Cassie's mouth opened and closed like a fish. I was having a bad day. I'd just gotten off the phone with you after you'd cried for an hour about Dad's new girlfriend, and I was frustrated. So you decided to entertain the nail salon with stories about your pathetic mother? I didn't mean for it to sound like that. But it did sound like that. And you knew it did because Linda looked uncomfortable telling me about it. I could feel my anger building, clean and sharp. How many other places have you held court about my failures, Cassie? Your office? Dinner parties with Marcus's friends? Your book club? Stop it. Does Marcus laugh when you tell him about my dating disasters? Do his parents shake their heads sadly when you update them on my latest desperate behavior? Mom, please stop. Or is it worse than that? Do you get sympathy? Poor Cassie, having to deal with her mess of a mother. How exhausting it must be for you. Tears were forming in her eyes now, but I felt no satisfaction. If anything, her tears made it worse, because they proved she knew exactly how cruel she'd been. I never wanted to hurt you, she whispered. But you did. Over and over, apparently. And the worst part is, you convinced yourself you were doing it out of love. I stood up, my legs unsteady. Tell me something, Cassie. When you're sharing these stories about how I embarrass you, do you ever mention that I worked 3 jobs to put you through college? Or that I've helped you with rent money twice this year? Or do those details not fit the narrative? She flinched like I'd hit her. That's not relevant. It's not relevant that I've sacrificed for you my entire adult life, but my dating mishaps are front page news for your social circle? You're twisting everything around. I'm seeing everything clearly for the first time. I reached for my purse, my hands shaking with rage. You want to know something funny? I actually defended you to your father. Cassie's face went white. What do you mean? When he said you'd been taking his side in the divorce. When he said you'd been feeding him information about my instability. I laughed, but it came out bitter. I told him he was wrong. I said my daughter would never betray me like that. I never. But you did, didn't you? The late-night phone calls with Dad where you checked in on how he was adjusting. The way you always seemed to know about his girlfriend before I did. The way you managed to stay neutral through the whole custody battle over family assets. The pieces were clicking together now, forming a picture I'd been too naive to see. You weren't just gossiping about me to strangers, were you? You were feeding information to both sides. That's not. I was trying to keep the peace. By throwing me under the bus to whoever would listen? I fumbled with my phone, my hands trembling so badly I could barely unlock it. Let me ask you something else, Cassie. That weekend Marcus's parents came to visit, the one where you suddenly uninvited me to dinner because I wasn't feeling well? Her silence was answer enough. I wasn't sick, was I? You just decided I wasn't presentable enough for their first impression. Mom, they're very traditional people. I thought it would be better to introduce you when. When what? When I'd lost enough weight. When I'd gotten my act together according to your standards? I could feel every eye in the salon on us now, but I didn't care anymore. Tell me, what did you tell them about why I couldn't make it? Another one of my episodes? Cassie's tears were flowing freely now, but instead of softening my heart, they only fueled my anger. Because I realized they weren't tears of remorse, they were tears of frustration that she'd been caught. You don't understand the pressure I'm under, she sobbed. Marcus's family has expectations. His mother already thinks he's settling by not marrying someone from their social circle. If she knew about Dad's affair, about the bankruptcy scare, about how messy everything got. So you decided I was the expendable part of the equation. No. I needed time to figure out how to present everything in the best light. There's that word again. Present. I finally managed to open my phone and started scrolling through my recent calls. You know what? I think I need to call Marcus's mother myself. Clear up any misconceptions you might have created. Don't you dare. Cassie lunged for my phone, but I pulled it back. Why not? If you've been so honest about our family situation, surely she'd love to hear my side of things. Mom, please. You don't understand what you'd be destroying. What I'd be destroying. I stared at her in disbelief. Cassie, you've spent months destroying me. To friends, family, your future in-laws, and apparently anyone else who'd listen. You've made me into a cautionary tale. That's not true. Then prove it. I held up my phone. Call Marcus right now. Tell him you want to arrange that lunch with his mother. Let me meet the woman whose opinion of me is apparently based on your character assassination. The panic in her eyes was unmistakable. It's not a good time. They're busy with wedding planning. Or maybe you're terrified I'll say something that contradicts the sob story you've been spinning about your train wreck mother. I stood up, my legs still shaky but my resolve hardening. You know what the real tragedy is here, Cassie? I've been so worried about being a burden to you that I never stopped to wonder if you were being a daughter to me. The salon had gone completely silent except for the hum of nail dryers. Even Linda had stopped pretending to work and was watching us with undisguised fascination. I said quietly, we're done here. I grabbed my purse and headed for the door, but Cassie's voice stopped me cold. You know what? Fine. You want the truth? You really want to know what I told Marcus? I turned around slowly. Her tears had stopped, and something harder had taken their place, something that reminded me uncomfortably of her father when he was backed into a corner. I told him that my mother had a complete breakdown after her husband left her for a younger woman. That she was so desperate for male attention she was embarrassing herself on dating apps. That she'd started dressing like she was 25 and posting inappropriate photos online. Her voice was getting louder, more vicious. I told him she called me crying multiple times a week, that she couldn't handle her own finances, and that she blamed everyone else for her problems instead of taking responsibility for her life. The salon had become a theater, and my daughter was center stage, delivering her final monologue. And you know what else I told him? That despite all of that, I still loved her and was trying to help her, but that his family needed to understand what they were dealing with. She stood up, her voice rising. Because the alternative was letting them meet you unprepared and watch you make a fool of yourself at our engagement party. Each word hit like a physical blow, but what made it unbearable was the ring of truth in some of it. I had been calling her frequently. I was struggling financially. I had posted photos with filters. But hearing my lowest moments recited like evidence in a prosecution was devastating. And his family's response to all this? I managed to ask. Relief, she said without hesitation. Relief that I was mature enough to recognize the situation and handle it appropriately. His mother said she was impressed that I could be so objective about family dysfunction. Family dysfunction. I was family dysfunction to be managed. Well, I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. At least now I know where I stand. But Cassie wasn't done. The floodgates had opened, and years of resentment were pouring out. Do you want to know what else I told him? I told him that you made Dad's affair sound like it came out of nowhere, but that I watched him check out of your marriage years ago because you stopped taking care of yourself. I told him that you act like Dad stole everything in the divorce, but you signed those papers without reading them because you were too emotional to think straight. My legs felt like they might give out. These weren't just casual gossip sessions, she'd been building a comprehensive case against my character. I told him that you blamed Dad for abandoning the family, but that maybe if you put half as much effort into your marriage as you're now putting into finding his replacement, things might have been different. The cruelest part was that her voice carried no malice now, just cold, clinical assessment. Like she'd been thinking about this for so long it had become fact in her mind. Cassie, I whispered, how can you say those things about me? Because someone needs to. Everyone else just enables you, but I'm tired of pretending that none of this is your fault. She was crying again, but angry tears now. I'm getting married, Mom. This is supposed to be the happiest time of my life, and instead I'm constantly fielding questions about whether my unstable mother is going to cause problems at my wedding. The wedding. Of course. It all came back to the wedding and how I might interfere with her perfect day. Questions from who? Marcus's mother. The wedding planner. The venue coordinator, after that disaster at the tasting menu where you got drunk and started crying about Dad. I remembered that day. I'd had 2 glasses of wine and gotten emotional looking at the father-daughter dance options. It had lasted maybe 5 minutes before I pulled myself together. But in Cassie's retelling, I was the drunk, unstable mother causing scenes at wedding venues. So what's your solution? I asked. Uninvite me to my own daughter's wedding? She hesitated just long enough to let me know she'd actually considered it. Of course not. But maybe you could try a little harder to pull yourself together before then? Get some professional help? Join a support group? Stop with the dating apps until you're more emotionally stable? She was presenting this like loving advice, but what I heard was a list of conditions for remaining in my daughter's life. And if I don't meet your standards? Then I guess we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Get your act together, or lose your place in my life. I looked at this woman, my daughter, whom I'd raised to be strong and independent, and realized I didn't recognize her at all. When had she become so calculating? So cruel? I need to go, I said quietly. But as I reached for the door handle, my phone buzzed with a text message. Without thinking, I glanced at it. It was from my ex-husband. Cassie told me about your conversation today. Call me. We need to talk about the wedding situation. My blood turned to ice. She'd already called him. While I was standing right here, she'd somehow managed to give him her version of events. I turned back to face her, holding up my phone. Seriously? She had the grace to look ashamed, but only barely. I knew you'd call him crying about this, so I figured I should give him a heads up. A heads up about what, exactly? About how you're probably going to twist this whole thing around and make yourself the victim. And that's when I realized the most terrifying truth of all. My daughter didn't just think I was pathetic, she thought I was dangerous. Dangerous enough that she needed to warn people about me. The recording app on my phone was still running from when I'd accidentally started it earlier. And it had captured every single word. The realization hit me like lightning. My phone had been recording this entire conversation. Every cruel word, every casual betrayal, every calculated justification for treating me like damaged goods. 23 minutes of audio evidence of exactly who my daughter really was. I stared at the red recording button, my thumb hovering over it. Part of me wanted to stop it immediately, to pretend this nuclear-level insight into Cassie's true feelings had never happened. But a darker part of me, a part that was growing stronger by the second, wanted to let it keep running. Mom? Cassie had noticed my sudden stillness. Are you okay? You look weird. Weird. Of course I looked weird. I'd just discovered that my only child had spent months systematically destroying my reputation to anyone who'd listen. But sure, I was the problem for looking weird about it. Just processing everything you told me, I said carefully, slipping my phone back into my purse. The recording was still going. Cassie's expression softened slightly, and for a moment I glimpsed the daughter I thought I knew. Look, Mom, I know this is hard to hear. But maybe it's good that we're finally being honest with each other. Honest. She thought this was honesty, her brutal character assassination disguised as tough love. You're right, I said, surprised by how calm I sounded. Honesty is important. So let me be honest too. Her face brightened, like she thought I was about to apologize or promise to change. I think you've become exactly like your father. The words hung in the air like a curse. Cassie's face went white, then red, then white again. That's a horrible thing to say. Is it? You both decided I was embarrassing. You both found it easier to talk about me behind my back than to my face. You both seem to think managing me is more important than loving me. I could feel something cold and sharp crystallizing in my chest. The only difference is he had the decency to divorce me before he started trashing me to other people. I am nothing like Dad. Really? Because 5 minutes ago you told a room full of strangers that Dad's affair was partially my fault because I'd stopped taking care of myself. That sounds exactly like something he would say. Cassie looked around the salon, suddenly remembering our audience. Linda and the other customers were watching this family implosion with the fascination of people passing a car accident. Can we please finish this conversation somewhere private? Why? You've never required privacy before when discussing my personal life. I felt a strange sense of power, knowing the recording was still running. Tell me something, Cassie. When you and Marcus laugh about my dating disasters, do you do impressions? Act out my desperate behavior for his entertainment? We don't laugh. Of course you do. It's probably hilarious, the middle-aged woman trying to reinvent herself. I bet you have great stories about my outfit choices and my filtered selfies. Her silence was damning. What about Marcus's friends? I'm sure they've heard all about the unstable future mother-in-law. Do they offer you sympathy? Advice on how to handle me? Stop it. Do they think it's sweet how you're trying to help me? How mature you are for recognizing my dysfunction and managing it so well. Mom, please. Or do they just think you're smart for protecting your image? For not letting your train wreck mother contaminate your perfect new life? Cassie started crying again, but something about her tears struck me as performative. Like she'd learned that crying usually made me back down and comfort her. Not today. You know what the really tragic part is? I continued, my voice gaining strength. I actually believed you cared about me. When you'd call to check in, I thought you were being a loving daughter. I never realized you were gathering intelligence to share with your social circle. That's not what I was doing. No? Then explain how Marcus's mother knows about my financial struggles. Explain how your friends know details about my divorce that I've never shared publicly. Explain how everyone in your life seems to have an opinion about my dating life. She couldn't explain it because we both knew exactly what she'd been doing. My phone buzzed again, another text from my ex-husband. This time I read it out loud. Whatever you said to upset Cassie, we need to discuss boundaries before the engagement party next week. I looked up at my daughter. Boundaries. There's that word again. What exactly did you tell him I said? Cassie's face crumpled, and suddenly she looked very young. I told him you were being unreasonable about some things I'd said. That you were taking everything the wrong way and making it about you. Making it about me. My own daughter discussing my private struggles with strangers was somehow me making things about myself. And what boundaries is he suggesting? She wouldn't meet my eyes. Maybe you should skip the engagement party. Just until things calm down. There it was. The real agenda. I'd been successfully painted as too unstable for public appearances, and now the solution was my absence from my daughter's life milestones. I stood up slowly, my mind racing. The engagement party was in 6 days. Marcus's entire family would be there, along with Cassie's friends and colleagues, all the people who'd been treated to months of stories about my dysfunction. You know what, Cassie? You're absolutely right. I think some boundaries would be healthy. Relief flooded her face. Really? I mean, I know it's hard, but... Starting with this one, if you want to discuss my personal life with people, you should probably make sure I'm not recording the conversation. The color drained from her face completely. What? I pulled out my phone and held it up, the recording app still clearly visible and running. 28 minutes and counting. Every word about how I'm a train wreck, how I embarrass you, how I'm too desperate and unstable to be around Marcus's family. You recorded me? Her voice came out as a whisper. Actually, I recorded us. Both sides of this lovely mother-daughter heart-to-heart. I smiled, and I could tell from her expression that it wasn't a nice smile. Including the part where you admitted to calling my ex-husband to warn him about me while I was standing right here. The panic in her eyes was absolute. Delete it. Why would I do that? You said honesty was important. This is just documentation. The salon had gone dead silent except for the hum of the nail dryers. Even the receptionist had stopped pretending to work and was openly staring at us. Cassie's face had gone from panic to something harder, more calculating. Mom, if you think you can blackmail me with some recording. Blackmail? I laughed, and the sound surprised me with its bitterness. Sweetie, I'm not blackmailing anyone. I'm just thinking about how much Marcus's traditional, image-conscious family would enjoy hearing their future daughter-in-law's true thoughts about family loyalty. You wouldn't dare. But something in my expression must have told her I absolutely would dare, because her voice started shaking. Mom, please. You don't understand what this would do to my relationship. Oh, I think I understand perfectly. The same way you understood what your little gossip sessions would do to mine. I slipped my phone back into my purse, still recording. Tell me something, does Marcus know about those late-night phone calls with your father? The ones where you fed him information about my instability during the divorce proceedings? Her silence was answer enough. Because that's an interesting detail for a federal judge's family to learn about. How their future daughter-in-law played both sides during her parents' divorce. Very traditional family values. That's not what I was doing. But her voice cracked on the words. No? Then what would you call secretly updating Dad about my dating life while simultaneously telling me he was worried about my mental state? What would you call feeding him details about my finances while crying to me about how unfairly he was treating us? Cassie looked around desperately, like she was searching for an escape route. I was trying to keep the peace. Someone had to be the adult in this situation. The adult. I tasted the word like poison. Is that what adults do? Betray their mother's confidence to score points with both parents? I never betrayed. Cassie, stop. We both know what you did. The question now is what we do about it. I stood up and gathered my things. I need to think about whether I'm attending your engagement party. Pure terror flashed across her face. You have to come. If you don't show up, Marcus's family will ask questions. They'll want to know why. And what will you tell them? That your unstable mother is having another episode? That would certainly fit your narrative. Mom, please. I'm begging you. Just delete the recording and we can work this out. The desperation in her voice should have moved me. 6 months ago, it would have. I would have comforted her, apologized for recording our conversation, promised to keep her secrets. But something fundamental had shifted. Maybe it was hearing myself described as family dysfunction to be managed. Maybe it was realizing that my own daughter had been orchestrating a campaign to isolate me from my own family events. Or maybe it was just the stunning realization that the person I'd sacrificed everything for saw me as an embarrassment to be contained. Work it out how, exactly? You want me to pretend I never heard what you really think of me? Smile and play the part of the grateful mother who's lucky to be tolerated. I want us to go back to normal. This is normal, Cassie. This has been normal for months, apparently. I just didn't know it. I slung my purse over my shoulder. The only thing that's changed is now I have proof. Proof of what? That my daughter is exactly the kind of person who would record a private conversation and use it to manipulate someone. The irony hit her like a slap. She just accused me of doing exactly what she'd been doing to me for months, weaponizing private information. That's different and you know it. Is it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you learned manipulation from the best. Your father would be proud. I headed for the door, but her voice stopped me one last time. If you play that recording for anyone, I'll never forgive you. I turned back to face her, and something in my expression made her take a step back. Forgive me? I said quietly. Cassie, after what I've learned today, your forgiveness is the last thing I'm worried about. The door chimed behind me as I left her sitting there, finally understanding that her perfect manipulation had been perfectly recorded. And the engagement party was only 6 days away. The drive home was a blur of rage and adrenaline. My hands shook so badly I had to pull over twice to collect myself. Each time I tried to process what had just happened, my mind reeled back to the same devastating truth. My daughter had been systematically destroying my reputation for months, and I had the entire confession recorded. By the time I reached my apartment, 3 more texts had come in from my ex-husband. I didn't read them. Instead, I sat in my car in the parking lot, staring at my phone where the recording had finally stopped at 34 minutes and 12 seconds. 34 minutes of evidence that would obliterate Cassie's carefully constructed image. The rational part of my brain, the part that had spent 28 years being a good mother, whispered that I should delete it. That playing this recording would destroy not just Cassie's relationship, but any chance we had of repairing our own. That revenge wasn't worth losing my daughter forever. But the larger part of me, the part that felt flayed raw and betrayed, wanted Marcus and his precious traditional family to hear exactly who they were welcoming into their fold. My phone rang. Cassie's name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again immediately. And again. On the 4th call, I finally answered. Delete the recording, Mom. Her voice was steady now, controlled. The tears were gone, replaced by something colder. I mean it. Or what? Or I'll tell Marcus you've been stalking his family. That you've been showing up at his mother's charity events uninvited, asking invasive questions about their finances. Her voice gained confidence as she spoke. I'll tell him you've been calling me obsessively, that I'm genuinely concerned about your mental health. The threat hit me like ice water. You'd lie about me? You mean the way you're planning to lie about me? Playing an edited recording out of context? There's nothing out of context about. There's everything out of context. You deliberately recorded a private conversation during an emotional moment, and now you want to use it to destroy my relationship. Her voice was getting sharper, more like her father's when he was building a case. Do you have any idea how that makes you look? How unhinged and vindictive. Unhinged. Vindictive. She was already crafting the narrative that would explain my behavior to anyone who mattered. Besides, she continued, who's going to believe you? A bitter divorcee with a history of emotional instability, secretly recording her own daughter? Versus me, someone who's been trying to help her unstable mother and finally reached a breaking point. The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. She'd learned more from her father than I'd realized. You really think Marcus's family would take your side if they heard what you said about family loyalty? I think they'd be horrified that you violated your own daughter's privacy. I think they'd see it as proof of everything I've told them about your boundary issues. Her voice softened into fake concern. Mom, this is exactly the kind of behavior that worries everyone. The secret recording, the threats, the inability to accept responsibility for your actions. She was reframing everything in real time, turning my evidence of her betrayal into proof of my instability. It was masterful and terrifying. I'm going to hang up now, she said gently, like she was talking to someone dangerous. But I want you to think very carefully about your next move. Because if you play that recording for anyone, I will make sure the whole family knows exactly how sick you become. The line went dead. I sat in my car, hands trembling, realizing that Cassie had just declared war. And she was much better at it than I was. The engagement party was in 5 days, and I had a choice to make. The next morning brought 17 missed calls from various family members. Apparently, Cassie had moved quickly to implement her threat. I sat at my kitchen table with cold coffee, listening to the voicemails in chronological order. It was like watching a master class in reputation destruction. First came my sister Rachel's confused message. Hey, just got off the phone with Cassie. She's really worried about you. Said you had some kind of episode at the nail salon yesterday? Call me back. Then my Aunt Marie, sounding increasingly concerned. Honey, Cassie thinks you might need professional help. She mentioned something about you recording people without permission? That doesn't sound like you, but she seemed really shaken up. By the fourth message, from my cousin Jennifer, the story had evolved. I heard about what happened. Cassie's beside herself. She said you've been acting paranoid lately, and now you're making threats? Maybe we should stage an intervention. An intervention. For the crime of recording my daughter's confession that she'd been trashing me to anyone who'd listen. But it was the message from my ex-husband that made my blood run cold. This recording stunt proves everything Cassie's been telling me about your mental state. I'm calling my lawyer about supervised visitation protocols. We can't have you around the grandkids if you're becoming unstable. Grandkids. Cassie wasn't even married yet, but he was already weaponizing hypothetical future children. I played back the threats, marveling at how efficiently my daughter had deployed them. In less than 12 hours, she'd managed to paint me as mentally unstable to our entire family network. Anyone I might have turned to for support had been preemptively poisoned against me. It was brilliant, really. Sociopathic, but brilliant. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Mrs. Peterson, this is Marcus. I think we should talk before the engagement party. Would you be available for coffee tomorrow afternoon? I stared at the message, my heart pounding. Marcus wanted to meet. This could be Cassie trying to control the narrative, or it could be him genuinely wanting to hear my side. Either way, it was dangerous. But dangerous for whom? I looked at my phone, where the 34-minute recording sat like a loaded weapon. Cassie thought she'd neutralized me with her preemptive strike, but she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd threatened me before hearing that recording herself. She had no idea how damning her own words actually were. The things she'd said weren't just cruel, they were calculating in ways that would horrify Marcus's traditional family. The admission that she'd played both sides during the divorce. The casual way she discussed managing their expectations about me. The cold analysis of how my presentation might affect Marcus's career prospects. Most damaging of all was the moment she threatened to uninvite me from my own daughter's wedding, then immediately called my ex-husband to warn him about our conversation while I was still standing there. Marcus's federal judge father would find that level of manipulation very interesting indeed. I typed back, tomorrow at 2 p.m. Starbucks on 5th Street. Then I did something I hadn't done in months. I called my lawyer. Janet, it's about the divorce settlement. I need to know if there are any clauses about parental alienation or interference with family relationships. Because if Cassie wanted to play hardball, she was about to learn that her mother wasn't as helpless as everyone thought. The engagement party was in 4 days, and I was no longer sure I'd be going as the grateful, managed mother who knew her place. I might be going as something much more dangerous, a woman with nothing left to lose. My meeting with Marcus was set for 2 p.m., but at 1:45, I was still sitting in my car outside Starbucks, paralyzed by indecision. The recording sat on my phone like a nuclear weapon, devastating if deployed, but guaranteed to leave scorched earth in its wake. Through the window, I could see Marcus already seated at a corner table, checking his watch. He looked exactly like the kind of man Cassie would choose, polished, professional, the type who'd never been embarrassed by family dysfunction because his family didn't have any. I was 5 minutes late when I finally walked in, my hands trembling slightly as I ordered a coffee I didn't want. Marcus stood to greet me with a kind of careful politeness that confirmed Cassie had already briefed him extensively. Thank you for meeting me, Mrs. Peterson. I know this is an unusual situation. Unusual. That was one way to put it. Please, call me Linda. I sat down across from him, studying his face for any hint of what Cassie had told him. Though I'm guessing you already know more about me than most people do. His smile faltered slightly. Cassie mentioned you'd been going through a difficult transition since the divorce. She's worried about you. Worried about me. The same daughter who'd called me a train wreck to strangers was now positioning herself as a concerned caregiver. I'm sure she shared her concerns very thoroughly. I kept my voice neutral, but something in my tone made him shift uncomfortably. Look, I know family dynamics can be complicated after a divorce. My parents went through something similar when I was younger. He leaned forward slightly, his voice taking on a therapeutic quality. Sometimes people say things they don't mean when emotions are running high. People say things they don't mean. He was giving me an out, a chance to apologize for whatever version of events Cassie had fed him. What exactly did she tell you I said? Marcus hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. Just that you'd been upset about some things she'd shared with friends. That maybe you felt she'd been indiscreet about family matters. Indiscreet. That was rich. And what's your take on family loyalty, Marcus? The question seemed to catch him off guard. I'm sorry? Your family values traditional relationships, right? Strong family bonds, mutual respect, that sort of thing? Of course. Family is everything to my parents. He paused. Which is why I wanted to talk to you directly. Cassie thinks maybe there's been some misunderstanding. She told me your mother was relieved that Cassie could be objective about family dysfunction. That she was impressed by Cassie's maturity in handling an unstable parent. I watched his face carefully. Is that the kind of family loyalty your parents value? The color drained from his cheeks. I don't think she meant it like that. How did she mean it? Marcus ran a hand through his hair, looking genuinely distressed. Mrs. Peterson, Linda, I think maybe we should focus on moving forward. Whatever was said, I'm sure it came from a place of love. You keep saying that. Whatever was said. But you know exactly what was said, don't you? Because Cassie told you. Just like she told your parents, and her friends, and apparently half the town. His silence confirmed everything. I pulled out my phone, my finger hovering over the recording app. One touch, and Marcus would hear his fiancée's true thoughts about family loyalty. He'd hear her casual cruelty, her calculated manipulation, her admission that she'd played both sides during my divorce. But I'd also lose any chance of salvaging my relationship with my daughter. Marcus, I said quietly, let me ask you something. If you discovered that someone you trusted had been systematically lying about you to other people, painting you as unstable, unreliable, embarrassing, what would you do? His eyes fixed on my phone. I'd want to understand why. And if that person was someone you'd sacrificed everything for? Someone you'd worked 3 jobs to support through college? Someone you'd given your entire adult life to? Linda, what are you saying? I looked at this man my daughter wanted to marry, this representative of the family whose opinion mattered so much to her that she'd thrown her own mother under the bus to impress them. Then I pressed play. Your daughter, she very, how you say, honest about you. Marcus's face went white as Linda's voice filled the coffee shop. The look on Marcus's face as my voice joined Linda's on the recording was everything I'd imagined and worse. His professional composure cracked completely as he heard his fiancée's words spill out of my phone speaker. Last time she hear, she tell everyone you, how she say? Train wreck. She say you cry all time, you have no money, you embarrass her. I watched Marcus process each revelation, his jaw tightening with every cruel detail. When we reached the part where Cassie called me desperate, he actually winced. Jesus, he whispered, but I held up a hand. We were just getting started. The recording continued through my confrontation with Cassie, and I watched Marcus's expression shift from discomfort to horror as he heard his fiancée's voice grow more vicious. Because you are. Cassie's voice rang out clearly. Ever since the divorce, you've been all over the place. The constant phone calls when you're upset, asking me to help you figure out dating apps, showing up to family events in clothes that are too young for you. Marcus's hand went to his mouth. Linda, I had no idea she. But then came the part that made him go completely still, Cassie's casual admission about managing his family's expectations. When they asked about family background, I can't exactly say my mother is spiraling through midlife crisis dating disasters and posting thirst traps on Facebook. I paused the recording. Thirst traps, Marcus. That's what she called photos of me at my friend's birthday party. His face was ashen. She told me you were going through a rough patch, but she made it sound like she was protecting you. Keep listening. The worst was yet to come. When we reached Cassie's explanation of what she'd told his family, Marcus actually pushed his chair back from the table. I told him that my mother had a complete breakdown after her husband left her for a younger woman. That she was so desperate for male attention she was embarrassing herself on dating apps. Stop, Marcus said quietly, but I didn't. Relief. Relief that I was mature enough to recognize the situation and handle it appropriately. His mother said she was impressed that I could be so objective about family dysfunction. The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus stared at my phone like it was a snake, his face cycling through emotions I couldn't read. Your mother said that? His voice was barely audible. About being impressed by Cassie's objectivity? I nodded, watching him process the implications. In his world, family loyalty wasn't just important, it was sacred. The idea that his mother had praised his fiancée for betraying her own parent would be incomprehensible to him. There's more, I said softly, and played the final, most damaging section, Cassie's admission about feeding information to both sides during my divorce, followed by her immediate phone call to my ex-husband while I stood there. When it ended, Marcus sat in complete silence for nearly a full minute. When he finally spoke, his voice was hollow. She called your ex-husband? While you were still there? To warn him about me. To give him her version of events before I could tell him what really happened. Marcus's hands were shaking slightly as he reached for his coffee, then seemed to forget what he was doing. I don't understand. The woman I know isn't, she would never. Wouldn't she? Marcus, think about your relationship. Has she ever shared private conversations with you? Told you things her friends said in confidence? Giving you heads up about situations before you encountered them yourself? The recognition in his eyes was immediate and devastating. She said she was protecting me from drama. That some of her friends could be complicated. His voice grew quieter. She'd tell me things to watch out for, ways people might try to manipulate me. And you thought that showed how much she cared about you? Yes. The word came out like a confession. I leaned forward. Marcus, what else has she told you about my family? About my ex-husband? About our financial situation during the divorce? But before he could answer, my phone buzzed with a text that made my blood freeze. It was from Cassie. If you're meeting with Marcus, you should know I'm pregnant. 3 weeks. Do you really want to destroy your future grandchild's family? The text message felt like a punch to the gut. I stared at my phone screen, reading the words over and over. I'm pregnant. 3 weeks. Marcus noticed my sudden stillness. What is it? I turned my phone toward him, watching his face cycle through shock, confusion, and something that might have been panic. He read the message twice before his eyes met mine. She's pregnant? His voice cracked slightly. She didn't, we weren't trying yet. We wanted to wait until after the wedding. Congratulations, I said flatly, though the word tasted like ash. Even now, even in the middle of exposing her betrayal, Cassie had found a way to regain control. The ultimate trump card, my future grandchild. My phone buzzed again, I was going to tell Marcus tonight. Romantic dinner, the whole thing. But if you're going to blow up my life with that recording, maybe he should hear it from you instead. Then another message immediately after, by the way, stress isn't good for early pregnancy. Just something to keep in mind. The manipulation was breathtaking. In 3 text messages, she'd managed to make me the villain again, the unstable mother threatening both her daughter's relationship and her unborn grandchild's well-being. Marcus was staring at his own phone now, presumably reading his own messages from Cassie. His face had gone completely white. She says you're threatening to ruin our engagement party unless I choose sides between you two. He looked up at me with genuine confusion. Is that true? Is that what she said? She says you've been planning this for days. That you deliberately recorded her to get revenge for some imagined slight. His voice was gaining strength, like he was grabbing onto this narrative as a lifeline. She says you're having some kind of breakdown and fixating on her relationship as the cause of all your problems. I could practically hear Cassie's voice in his words. She was rewriting the entire story in real time, turning herself from perpetrator to victim with masterful precision. And you believe that? Marcus gestured helplessly at my phone. I don't know what to believe anymore. That recording, the things she said were horrible. But secretly taping your own daughter? Using it to ambush her fiancé? That's not exactly stable behavior either. He was right, and we both knew it. I'd crossed a line by playing that recording, and Cassie was betting that her pregnancy announcement would make me too guilty to cross any more. What else did she tell you just now? I asked. Marcus hesitated, clearly torn between honesty and protecting his pregnant fiancé. She said you've been spiraling since the divorce. That you've become obsessed with the idea that everyone's conspiring against you. That this recording thing is proof you need professional help. And the pregnancy? She's scared. His voice softened with protective instinct. She says she's been trying to help you, but you've turned on her. That she's worried about what you might do if you feel cornered. What I might do. Another subtle threat, wrapped in concern for my mental state. Marcus, do you want children? The question clearly caught him off guard. Of course. Eventually. And you want them to grow up in a family where loyalty means managing other people's reputations? Where love looks like betraying confidences to protect your image? His jaw tightened. That's not fair. She made mistakes, but she's carrying my child now. A child she's already using as a shield against consequences. I stood up, my decision crystallizing. Tell me something, Marcus. When you have kids, are you going to teach them that family means unconditional loyalty? Or are you going to teach them Cassie's version, that family means whatever serves your interests? You're twisting everything around. Am I? I grabbed my purse, the weight of my phone heavy against my shoulder. Think about that recording, Marcus. Think about how easily she threw away 28 years of my love and sacrifice. Then ask yourself what she'll do to you the first time protecting you becomes inconvenient. As I walked away, I heard him calling after me, but I didn't turn around. The engagement party was tomorrow night, and Cassie thought her pregnancy announcement had neutralized me. She was about to learn how wrong she was. The engagement party was everything Cassie had dreamed of: elegant string lights, pristine white linens, and Marcus's family holding court like visiting royalty. I stood in the doorway of the country club ballroom, watching my daughter work the room in a flowing dress that artfully concealed her condition. She spotted me immediately, her smile faltering for just a moment before she composed herself. Within seconds, she was gliding over with Marcus in tow, both of them radiating the kind of forced cheer that screamed damage control. Mom. You look beautiful. She kissed my cheek, whispering urgently, please don't do anything you'll regret. Congratulations on the pregnancy, I said loud enough for nearby guests to hear. How exciting that there's so much to celebrate tonight. Cassie's face went rigid, but Marcus looked genuinely confused. Mom, we haven't announced. Haven't you? I smiled innocently. I just assumed, since Cassie's been sharing so many family updates lately. Marcus's mother materialized beside us, elegant and imposing in navy blue. You must be Cassie's mother. I'm Eleanor Richardson. Her handshake was firm, her smile polite but measuring. Linda Peterson. Thank you for including me tonight. I paused deliberately. I know Cassie's given you quite a comprehensive picture of our family dynamics. Eleanor's smile flickered slightly. She's mentioned you're adjusting well to your new independence. Adjusting. Yes, that's one way to put it. I could feel Cassie's panic radiating beside me. Though I'm curious what other ways she's put it. The silence stretched just long enough to become uncomfortable before Marcus jumped in. Can I get you ladies some champagne? None for me, I said. I'm driving. Though I imagine Cassie will be abstaining as well, given her condition. Eleanor's eyebrows rose slightly. Marcus shot Cassie a look of pure confusion, and I could see her calculating furiously behind her smile. Actually, I continued, I brought something to share tonight. A little mother-daughter moment I thought everyone should hear. I pulled out my phone. Sometimes technology captures the most authentic emotions, don't you think? Cassie's face went white. Mom, please. Oh, this will just take a moment. I turned to Eleanor with my brightest smile. Your son was so interested in our family dynamics yesterday. I thought you might enjoy the unfiltered version. Before anyone could stop me, I pressed play. Linda's voice from the nail salon filled the immediate area. Your daughter, she very, how you say, honest about you. The effect was immediate. Conversations around us began to fade as people turned toward the sound. Eleanor's expression shifted from polite confusion to sharp attention. Marcus grabbed for my phone, but I stepped back smoothly. Let's all hear how Cassie really feels about family loyalty. As my recorded voice joined the conversation, asking what Cassie had said about me, I watched the color drain from every face in our small circle. But I wasn't watching them anymore. I was watching the guests beginning to cluster around us, their champagne glasses forgotten as they strained to hear. When we reached Cassie's voice saying, because you are, in response to my question about being a train wreck, Eleanor actually gasped. Turn it off, Marcus whispered desperately, but the damage was accelerating. The recording continued, broadcasting every cruel detail to the growing crowd. Cassie's comments about my thirst traps, her admission about managing expectations with Marcus's family, her cold analysis of my desperation, all of it spilling out in her own voice while she stood frozen beside me. By the time we reached her confession about calling my ex-husband while I was still standing there, the entire party had gone silent except for the relentless audio evidence of her betrayal. When the recording finally ended, the silence was absolute. Eleanor Richardson, federal judge's wife and pillar of conservative society, looked at her future daughter-in-law with undisguised horror. You called this woman's ex-husband to warn him about her? While she was standing right there? Cassie's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Around us, guests were pulling out their own phones, undoubtedly capturing her humiliation for their own social circles. I think, I said quietly, slipping my phone back into my purse, we all understand family dynamics much better now. I turned and walked toward the exit, leaving my daughter to face the consequences of her own words. Behind me, I could hear Eleanor's voice, sharp with disgust. Family loyalty, Cassie. It's not negotiable in our family. The last thing I heard before the ballroom doors closed behind me was the sound of my daughter finally understanding what real consequences felt like. She'd taught me that family loyalty was conditional. Tonight, she learned it was also reciprocal.